at this Baptist preacher trying to preach fewer verses. Oh, that's interesting. This coming Sunday is Martin Luther King Sunday, and at Riverside and many other places, that is definitely a day to give some specific attention. We are bringing a guest preacher into our pulpit, the Reverend Karlos Nichols, and we are diving into the Gospel of Mark. So, Carlos, there's a whole lot going on this coming Sunday. You're a returning guest. You were with us a year ago, so you're kind of guest-ish. Uh, MLK Sunday is always a thing, and this Gospel of Mark. First off, for anyone watching, listening, who's like, oh yeah, I remember this guy from a year ago, give us just an update. Remind us who you are and all the, give us your concise Baptist version of all the cool things you're up to these days.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Reverend Jim. I'm so excited to be here. I am I'm an educator, preacher, good troublemaker is what I have subscribed to myself. Also, a theological agitator. So in all of my work, I like to push inquiry and asking questions about every single thing, right? Currently, I am in the educational landscape again. I'm back in high school as an academy dean in Washington, D.C. A lot of focus on culture and belonging for students and student success, and still doing a lot of heavy denominational work with the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated around, progressively infusing the denomination with the tools and the best practices to have an effective organization that reaches all people and that empowers all people.
Simple stuff, right? Very, very deep work, but essential work in so many spaces. And we are grateful to have you returning to Riverside. Before we get to the text, which is Mark chapter 2, there's a whole lot of fun stuff going on here. I think it's verses 1 through 22. That's what I have written down. Is that what you have written down? Maybe?
I'm 1 through 12. 1 through 12.
Oh, well, 1 through 12 works. Okay, maybe the brackets are what I'm reading into it. Mark 2, 1 to 12. It's all good. It's all good. Look at this Baptist preacher trying to preach fewer verses. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. We'll get to Mark in a second. But first, let's talk about MLK Sunday. So this coming Sunday, Monday is Martin Luther King Day. The Martin Luther King Sunday at Riverside has always been a moment. There's a rich history of that incredible individual in this physical space. How does it feel for you to come to Riverside and stand in a pulpit where Martin Luther King stood, and then you're going to be preaching on a day attributed to his honor?
Yeah, so mixed emotions, nervousness, and a lot of I'm honored, and I'll tell you for two quick reasons. So I am a grandson of the sanitation worker strike. My grandfather was one of the sanitation workers that King came to Memphis for. I'm a Memphis native, and it was King's advocacy around the sanitation strike. He ultimately lost his life. That helped to afford my family, my mother's side of the family, a better quality of living. And then also, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King is my fraternity brother who rests in Omega chapter. We're both members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And so to be in that space where my dear brother stood and preached what is known as one of his most controversial and time-turning sermons is an honor for me. And I'm just so grateful to be with the Riverside Church family and to be in that space and to be trusted in that space in such a respected pulpit.
That is a good legacy that you are carrying and leaning into just anywhere you go. But then I think there'll be a lot of the spirits aligning as you step into the space where so much of that energy has already been. And don't worry, I know the pulpit at Riverside, it has that like giant thing that looks like it's going to collapse on you if you say something wrong. I've looked, it doesn't move, at least not yet. So I think it's safe.
Good. And hopefully you guys can see me because I'm a little bit on the more we call it snack size height height way. So hopefully you guys can see me over that pulpit.
We got you covered. We got you covered. I'm the opposite. I'm a little extra long, so yeah. Oh, well, it is going to be incredible. I mean, even knowing, I mean, just the heritage you bring of being, connected to the sanitation workers like that just adds another level and layer to what you bring anywhere. But like I said, on this particular day in this particular place, that is going to just add a richness that you embody before you even speak a word. So I am eager, along with so many others, for what that experience will be. But about that experience, Mark chapter 2. So, okay, we're just looking at verses 1 through 12, huh? So
Yes.
this is just Jesus healing a paralytic. Can you give us a snapshot? What's this text? What's the story? And then how are you kind of holding it as you prepare for Sunday?
So Jesus has begun this, what I like to call, this Renaissance tour before Beyonce did the Renaissance tour, right?
Yep, yep.
This Renaissance tour of healing, right? Every chapter of the book of Mark has some reference to a miracle or healing in it, right? And so when we get to chapter 2, Jesus has returned back home after this first leg of this tour. He's returned, to home. He's already done the overseas leg like Beyonce has done and come back. No Beyonce references in the sermon as of now, but I am a fan. And so he comes back, and of course the word has spread, right? That Jesus is back in town, and the people are gathered in this place. They're in anticipation of what they need. And then here's this paralytic man along with friends. Some of the texts say 4, some of the texts do not. Some of the translations do not give a specific number, but Mark is always specific about saying, they, right? Mark in the KJV, it says 4, but there's a lot of hyperbole, right? Of maybe exaggerations, maybe not. But what I'm finding interesting is that there is so much movement going on in this text. There are so many people doing different things in this one space. There are so many people gathered. And so when I looked at the text initially, and the first thing I saw, they were gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left. So if there's no room, there's the audacity of somebody else to show up. And it is this paralytic man with his friends. And so I'm looking at this text, I'm looking at things like the audacity to show up with expectation. I'm also looking at, and I'm having deep conversations with Reverend Kyle Stevenson, who is a theological scholar on disability. I'm looking at access, right? The access to this expectation, but then also there's in this text not so much what Jesus says, but what Jesus does, right? There's a lot of doing in this Mark text that really, really draws me. So my background is in musical theater. So I'm always looking at settings. I'm looking at who's moving where. I'm looking, I'm always looking at text and saying, if I were to block this in a play or on a stage, who would be at 2 o'clock? Who would be at 4 o'clock? Whose feet would be facing each other? And so that's kind of what we have here. We have this large scene with lots of people, but some very, very specific moments that can help us lean into what does it look like to have authority to issue justice to someone that others may seemingly think that they should have access to first. And so I'm still playing with, how do we situate ourselves in this text?
There's a lot there.
There's a lot, I've heard it preached from many angles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many angles, us being the friends, us being the paralytic man, but what about, there are probably some of us that would take the posture of the crowd.
Yeah.
Right? I need to get what I'm going to get first before someone else gets what they get. And so in this justice context, in this MLK context, looking at those things in a fresh and new way.
Yeah. Or the crowd who wasn't even aware of this person trying to get access, who wasn't able to get some of them might have been like, hey, I was here first, get out of my way. Others are just ignorant, completely unaware of the fact that someone can't have access to this thing they need until they literally cut a hole in the roof and come down from the ceiling. And imagine the uproar that caused, the disruption that caused. Like the sky is falling. What's going on? This guy's trying to teach, and now the ceiling's caving in.
Absolutely. And even at looking at this text, placing ourselves, like I said, I always take and I put it in dramatic terms when I'm imagining sermon. Your strategy is to cut through this roof and through these beams and this mud. Someone could potentially be harmed
Yeah.
by what is happening, right? So how is
Wow.
all of this working in a way where there's communal healing, but then
Yeah.
also the understanding, as Dr. Valerie Bridgman says, that what happens when there's collateral damage for our justice work?
Ooh.
How do we prevent collateral damage in our works of justice, of trying to access, right,
Yeah.
what we know that we are worthy of getting,
Yeah.
because we know the possibilities. And so with that dreams and nightmares title, there's a lot of opportunity to
Yeah.
look at dreams.
Like imagine if the crowd had the wherewithal to see this person who needed this moment with Jesus and said, "Hey, let's make some space. This person needs to come forward," rather than just like blockading the entrance out of whatever intentional or unintentional purposes. That would have, then there'd be no there'd be no structural damage, there'd be no falling beams and black eyes and whatever and repair that has to be. Someone had to fix the roof later. I mean, that's a big problem too. So there, if only we had had the awareness of who needs something and can we work together to get them what they need, rather than them having to do whatever's necessary to get, which is also a good story. I mean, come on, if
Yeah.
justice isn't going to be given to you, justice is going to be gotten somehow. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot to be said.
Exactly. Exactly.
My favorite Bible geek moment in this text, which is very minor, and I'm a Bible geek, so I like these random things. People often talk about, your faith heals you. That's a whole other conversation. But in this text, it's very interesting whose faith provokes the healing. And Jesus looks at the friends of the paralytic, and says, "It's because of your faith, the friends who brought the person through the roof, that the person is healed." And I just like that sense that my faith can impact somebody else regardless of theirs. And again, it ties into that communal aspect of work and justice and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does, because I can imagine this man in anticipation of getting to
Yeah.
where he wants to go with hope, and seeing yet another barrier, and what
Yeah.
that does psychologically into the spirit, to say, maybe not today,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe not today.
Yeah.
But those friends, what does it mean to have friends around us to say, friends around to say, this could possibly happen? It's a possibility. Let's
Yeah.
let's go to the roof.
Yeah.
Let's
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Let's tear down this structure. Even if it means it's a structure where we think that Jesus dwells.
But if Jesus is dwelling inside a structure that doesn't provide access for those who need it, then we need to tear some of that down.
Exactly. Exactly.
Whew, okay, so no sanctuary is safe. No steeple is off limits. God is going to move where she's going to move, whether we have deemed it as on or off limits. I like it. I like it. Okay.
Absolutely.
How does all of this just sit with you when you look at the world we're sitting in? I mean, we're all sitting in a world where there's ongoing crises, whether it's the latest headlines of genocide in Gaza, upcoming presidential elections, and the rhetoric that's used in that regard. Just when it comes to the broad spectrum of justice work that we're bombarded with, how does that intersect with the specificity of how you're looking at a particular sermon? So this could be one of two ways. You might think the question could be, how do you take all the justice work in the world and then preach a singular sermon? Or just like, what's kind of humming with you in the world as you think about this sermon in particular?
So, honestly, when I first looked at this text with the state of everything that's going on in Gaza and Palestine, the concept of houses, really troubled me because, as we know, when we do this exegetical work, go and look at the architecture, right? And thinking of those who have lost their homes and another record of architecture being gone,
Mm,
because in exegesis of this text and historical work, it's really hard to find concrete examples of what this architecture would have looked like apart from any types of buildings that were built beyond the 5th century. And so I'm always thinking about injustice work. What are the narratives that are lost
mm,
when history shifts, right?
yeah.
And so with this text, I'm looking at their stories here, but there are also many narratives within this one text.
Yeah.
And so when we're approaching this text, where do we sit in the narratives and which stories are lost? Who's named and who's not named,
Mm,
right? Um, who's there were so many people that were in search of a healing moment, but we don't have the record of what they were desiring.
yeah.
But we do know that there was a large crowd of people, right? And so I'm looking at places, people, and narratives. And even in our justice work, when we're focusing on movement building and organizing, we're looking at people's places, we're looking at housing, we're looking at their stories, and we're also looking for those names to help to
Yeah.
give testimony for what's possible and what has not been possible.
Yeah. Hmm. That 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 invitation to think of space and building and what's lost in the stories that just are unable to be told or recalled because architecture doesn't exist. And like you said, we don't have any to even ask what kind of house was Jesus in. We don't really know. And it brings us back to just the destruction of houses in that same Palestinian area to this day, and how much history is continuing to be lost. And
Absolutely.
whew, that's a haunting exegesis right there. Oh well, that is the the challenge and the invitation, and I dare say joy of preaching is holding all of this myriad experience together, the emotion, the history, and then somehow turning it into 20 or so minutes, maybe 30 if you're gonna go Baptist on us. 40? Well,
Yeah.
I like to think as long as you don't preach longer than Martin Luther King Jr. did, you're okay. So he
I will say at Union Theological Seminary, where I did my master's work, I had a lot of homiletics classes where we were only allowed to preach 6 to 7 minutes.
oh
Um,
yeah,
with Gary Simpson, Dr. Gary Simpson,
yep,
Dr.
oh yeah,
Timothy
I know Dr. Simpson.
Simpson, and my favorite, my advisor, Dr. Lisa Thompson. It was literally 7 minutes. If you can't say it in seven, and now I appreciate that because now 20 to 30 feels like a long process.
Yep. Yep. I feel the same. I feel the same. Otherwise, I'm just repeating myself and missing the landing. And, I'm having fun, but everyone else is like, what's going on?
You've already said that twice. We heard that. We heard that. So,
Did he need to hear it again, or did I need to hear? I'm not sure now.
exactly, exactly.
Oh, well, Reverend Carlos, this is obviously going to be an incredible Sunday, a powerful sermon, an incredible space to share with you. So we are all at Riverside looking forward to that. But before we end this, we are trying something this year to always include a game in this
Okay.
little Word Made Fresh space. So this is just, this kind of challenges your Bible, chops a smidge here
Okay.
through the lens uh, of non-traditional ways of seeing it. So just hold it here. Okay,
Okay.
this is
Okay.
called theomoji. We're calling it theological emoji. So your challenge, I'm going to show you on screen here, is to figure out what Bible story these emojis are trying to tell. All right, there's gonna be two, so you get 2 rounds. Here,
Okay.
here we go. Here we go. What is that story? This is a story from the Bible, Hebrew scriptures. Give you a little bit of hint. I may have had way too much fun making this. You got a bald dude, a couple bears.
Okay.
Insert Jeopardy music here.
Bald dude, couple bears. I think you have me stumped here.
Okay. This is one of those deep cuts. This is, oh shit, I'm gonna mix it up now. Elijah or Elisha? I think it's Elisha, who got made fun of by 3 kids for being bald, and then he sent 2 bears to go kill them.
Oh, yes, Elisha. Okay.
Yeah, just
So
your
these are
common
kids.
Sunday school stories we all learned as a kid. Didn't you have a flannel graph of this one in Sunday school? No, I guess not. Okay, all right. We're here. One more round. Here we go. Round two.
Okay.
Round two. Here you go. Got a woman dancing.
This is one of my favorite texts.
Okay.
This is definitely Miriam.
Yes.
And I think somewhere there I see a tambourine. It's there.
There should be. Yeah, that emoji didn't quite exist yet, I guess, but we can imagine it there. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
All right. There we go. Crossing the Red Sea with Miriam doing her thing. All right, 50%. We'll give you that. That totally passes. Your grace abounds regardless. It's all good. It's all good. Consider that, necessary sermon prep.
Yes. I may start, if I ever get back into, some other like associate pastoral work, like those actually being like the text indicators. Like this is the text for today. It's just gonna be emojis in the.
Yes. Those who have ears, let them hear.
Yes.
Oh, well, silly games aside, thank you for spending this time to hang out and chat about a whole range, but particularly this upcoming Sunday. It is going to be incredible. For everyone watching, listening, you can definitely join us. If you are in the New York City area or can get yourself to the Upper West Side or West Harlem, join us at 11 a.m. on Sunday the 14th. But if you're anywhere in the world with an internet signal, you can join us as well. trcnyc.org. It's all live streamed. You can participate, experience the entire worship service as well. It's going to be a great day, and we are really looking forward to seeing you soon at Riverside. Thanks again, Reverend Carlos.